In a quaint home in Brightburn, Kansas, Kyle and Tori Breyer are in bed, about to make love. Kyle is hopeful they'll have a baby this time, but Tori is tired of hoping and just wants to have fun. Suddenly, Tori feels a tremor and stands up to check, but it stops until a crash shakes their home. Outside the window, they notice a bright red light in the distance. After the incident, Kyle and Tori are blessed with a baby named Brandon. 10 years later, Tori checks Brandon's room to get him ready for school, but finds the room empty. Hide and seek is a game they often play, so she whistles to get a hint of his location. Brandon whistles back, teasing Tori because she's far from his hiding spot. Brandon's voice leads her to the barn. She carefully checks through the hay bales but doesn't find him. Brandon jumps at her, and Tori laughs at his prank. She hugs Brandon, telling him he'll always be her baby. Kyle meets them outside and warns Brandon about the barn rules, worrying for his safety. At school, Brandon is called to answer a question about bees and wasps. He answers readily, saying that bees are pollinators and wasps are predators. He continues by mentioning policed sulcifer, a species that lost the ability to nest and forces other species to raise their young. One of his classmates, named Royce, picks on him for talking too much, and the whole class laughs except for Caitlin. She comforts him, saying smart guys like him rule the world, and they smile at each other. That night, Tori checks on Brandon before settling down to paint. A red light pulses from the barn, and Brandon starts having seizures in his room. Tori pauses her painting, hearing a commotion, but Brandon's seizures stop, so she continues. Brandon wakes up and walks out of his window, causing Tori to hear a loud thud. Now concerned, she checks outside to see if something is wrong. She turns back only to feel someone running behind her. She runs through the clothesline and catches a glimpse of Brandon's back before he disappears. Tori sees the barn in the distance and searches for him there. She finds him murmuring strange words and aggressively trying to open a locked compartment. Worried, Tori calls for him several times, but he doesn't respond. She reaches out to touch him, and he slowly looks at her before jumping in shock, confused. Tori comforts him, saying he's sleepwalking, but Brandon mentions hearing voices. Not wanting to worry him, she dismisses it and takes him back to bed. About the barn incident, saying that Brandon was just sleepwalking. The next day, Kyle reveals to Brandon that he struggled when they first adopted him. When Tori leaves Kyle alone with Brandon, he tries using candy to calm the boy, solidifying his place as a father. The two bond over the same candy until Kyle leaves Brandon to mow the lawn. The lawnmower doesn't start quickly, and Brandon's frustration builds until he throws the machine across the yard with superhuman strength. In shock, Brandon raises his hands, not believing what he just did. He finds the lawnmower upside down with the blades spinning dangerously. Voices whisper to him, hypnotizing him to slam his hand into the blades. When he does, the machine breaks, but his hand comes out unharmed. On Brandon's 12th birthday, the family celebrates at a restaurant with Tori's sister, Marilee, and her husband, Noah. Marilee, also Brandon's school counselor, talks about how much of a genius he is, and as a reward, Noah gives him a hunting rifle as a birthday present. Kyle confiscates the gun due to Brandon's age. When Brandon's protests are rebuffed, he demands the gun from Kyle, slamming his fist on the table. The arcade screens flicker, and people look at the commotion. With Brandon's attitude, Kyle ends the celebration early. When Brandon doesn't move to leave, Kyle grabs him, causing the arcade screens to flicker again. Tori convinces Brandon to listen to Kyle, and they leave. Then, Erica, a waitress, cautiously watches them as they leave. At home, Kyle and Tori talk about the changes in Brandon. Tori reminds them of their teenage years when they were worse. Her parents never cared, so she vows to do better with Brandon. Kyle agrees and suggests they go camping in Drivewood tomorrow to relax. While they're getting ready, Tori reminds Brandon about his jacket, but he ignores her and continues eating breakfast. Kyle checks on Brandon and finds him strangely eating his fork. He pulls it away, and Brandon gasps awake, confused with the bent fork in his hand. While Tori gets Brandon's jacket in his room, she finds pictures under his bed. She shows Kyle the pictures, and they flip through images of women in lingerie. They amuse themselves with Brandon's idea of entertainment until they start seeing pictures of human organs. Disturbed, they decide to talk to him later. While hunting, Kyle discusses sexual relations with Brandon, saying that it's not purely physical but about love. He says it's normal to have urges and indulge, subtly informing him about self-love. Brandon mistakes this for a different urge, and Kyle awkwardly ends the conversation. At Caitlin's house, she is awakened by music. She gets up from bed and sees her laptop playing, so she closes it. She returns to bed but hears the music again. Scared, she quickly closes the laptop again with several notes on top. Feeling someone nearby, she turns to the window and immediately calls her mother, Erica. Erica enters through the door, making Caitlin scream. She points to the window, distressed, saying someone is there, but Erica doesn't find anyone. Erica tries to calm her down until she learns it was Brandon Breyer at Caitlin's window. Tori frantically searches the woods for Brandon when she realizes he's gone. He pops up behind her, saying he only went to pee. At school, Tori consults Marilee about Brandon's attitude at the restaurant, still concerned. Marilee reassures her that it's only puberty, and Tori is relieved. She picks up Brandon and sees him drawing symbols, but Brandon quickly covers them up. It's night at the barn when Kyle hears the chickens disturbed. He arms himself with a gun, thinking it's a wolf, but finds Brandon instead. He just stands there, eerily staring as the chickens panic. Kyle reprimands Brandon for being out late and takes him home, unsettled. After some sleep, Kyle wakes up to find the chickens dead. He shows the chicken coop to Tori and blames Brandon, explaining what happened earlier. Despite his argument that a wolf wouldn't be able to break a lock, she doesn't believe him. The next day at school, Brandon and his classmates are doing a trust circle exercise. When it's his turn, Caitlin lets him fall to the ground, causing their classmates to laugh. She calls him a pervert and refuses to help until the coach threatens to fail her. Angry at Caitlin, Brandon holds onto her hand when she offers help. She screams as he squeezes until he crushes her hand. After the incident, Brandon's and Caitlin's parents meet with the sheriff in the principal's office. Erica is outraged at Brandon's actions against her daughter and wants him locked up. When Erica is informed that his punishment will only be suspension and counseling, she's infuriated, questioning Brandon's real mother, who could be a psycho. Tori defends her position as Brandon's mother and scolds her for targeting a child. She sincerely apologizes for Caitlin's situation before leaving. Tori and Kyle pick up Brandon, and he stares menacingly at Erica as they leave. At home, Tori confesses to Kyle about the night Brandon sleepwalked. Kyle worries about Brandon's attraction to the locked trapdoor. He reminds her that Brandon isn't human and fears he'll cause more harm. Brandon is in his bed when he has a revelation about the whispers. He goes out in the rain, heading to the barn. As Tori searches for an explanation about Brandon's origins, she sees a red light through the window. She goes to the barn and finds Brandon floating above the red light. Panicking, she jumps to catch him, but he falls and cuts himself on the alien ship. Seeing Brandon injured, Tori comforts him. He questions her about what he is, and she decides to confess, talking about their struggles to have a baby until he came inside the alien ship. Brandon pulls away from her, upset with her lies. He runs outside, finally deciphering the whispers as take the world and screams with laser-red eyes. In the next moment, Brandon goes to Caitlin's room. The girl is scared of him, even when he gives her flowers as an apology. He tells her she shouldn't be afraid, as she is one of the few people who know he is special. When she mentions that her mother forbade her from talking to him, he says he'll take care of it. Erica is at the diner, cleaning, when she suddenly notices symbols drawn on the windows. Thinking it's a prank, she calls for Gary. The light flickers erratically, and she looks up as they break, and a shard of glass pierces her eye. She painfully removes it, blood pouring onto the floor. Erica looks around for the culprit, but blood covers her vision. Afraid for her life, she grabs a baseball bat, swings it around to scare him off, and then locks herself in the freezer. A hot laser splits the metal door, then it is forcibly opened. Erica sees a boy wearing a cape and mask with eyes glowing a terrifying red before he kills her. Tori and Kyle wait for Brandon at breakfast, anxious about the previous night. When Brandon arrives, they are relieved to see him calm and finally accepting his situation. Meanwhile, the sheriff investigates Erica's disappearance at the diner when he notices something on the windows. He blows on the glass and discovers a mysterious symbol. During Brandon's counseling session, Marilee questions him about his adoption. She discovers that Brandon has started to differentiate himself as a superior being after learning about his origins. Given Brandon's lack of remorse for Caitlin, she urges him to open up. Despite being family, she is serious about her work and will provide a report to the sheriff. This makes Brandon tremble with anger. In a bar, Kyle and his friends talk about Erica's death. EJ insinuates that Brandon is involved because of the incident with Caitlin but apologizes when rebuked. Kyle fears that Brandon is becoming a monster, but Noah reassures him, saying that all children are monsters before they leave home. Marilee is home alone when Brandon visits. He subtly threatens her not to send the report to the sheriff, but merrily stands her ground and firmly asks him to leave. Although his smile is menacing, he complies. After closing the door, Merrily texts Noah before bed. She doesn't notice Brandon with his red mask, lurking in the darkness behind her. Brandon sneaks into her room while she sleeps but hears Noah coming home. Noah brushes his teeth in the bathroom and doesn't notice Brandon behind him but feels it when someone moves to the closet. He turns on the light and is startled to see Brandon with his mask. Noah scolds him and drags him outside to his vehicle. Before getting in, Brandon warns him not to tell his parents, but Noah doesn't feel threatened. The light flickers as Noah goes to the driver's seat. When he doesn't see Brandon inside the vehicle, he goes to force him in. As soon as Brandon puts on the mask, Noah grabs him but is pushed away. Brandon disappears into the darkness, and Noah is terrified. He limps to his car and drives. After gaining some distance, Brandon hits his vehicle, causing him to lose control. The car breaks down, and Noah desperately tries to restart it. After flashing his headlights, he sees Brandon standing in front of his car. When the lights go out and on again, he sees him flying, then disappearing. Noah looks around anxiously before Brandon lifts his vehicle into the air and then lets it go. The vehicle crashes headfirst into the ground, causing Noah to break his jaw on the steering wheel. Noah unfortunately dies, and Brandon uses his blood to draw a symbol on the road. Since Brandon hasn't returned home, Kyle sits while Tori frantically calls Merrily. Brandon enters, hiding his shirt in his hands. Tori hugs him, asking what happened, and he lies, pretending to be upset about a soccer game that led to bullying. Tori and Kyle know Brandon was lying when he goes to his room. They are at a loss since they cannot easily provide a specialist for their alien son. Kyle blames himself for Brandon because they raised him when he wasn't meant to be human. At night, Kyle dreams of the past. His mind guides him back to the woods when they first found Brandon. Tori carries a bleeding baby over her, and when she offers it to him, he sees the monster Brandon is in his mind. He suddenly wakes up as Merrily calls them. The couple goes to the hospital and comforts Merrily, who is distressed about Noah's accident. She shows concern for Brandon, and the couple is shocked to learn he visited her before that. They talk to Brandon in the morning and are disturbed by his indifference to Noah's death. Tori gently asks Brandon if he knew anything about Noah's death, but he lies to them. Kyle explodes at Brandon, knowing that their son is a monster who killed his friend. Brandon doesn't take it well and pushes Kyle, throwing him against a cabinet. Tori breaks up the fight and tells Brandon to go to his room. Kyle suspects that Brandon is hiding his shirt for a reason. He searches Brandon's room while he showers and finds the shirt stained with blood. He immediately hides the shirt, pretending to apologize for his actions. When Kyle shows Tori the evidence of Brandon's crime, she refuses to see it. Kyle becomes frustrated with her, leading him to say that Brandon isn't their son. She gets upset with his words and leaves. While examining Noah's accident, the sheriff discovers the same symbol he found in Erica's case. Kyle looks at Brandon's baby items and remembers his love for his son. He goes to bed and tells Tori that he will take Brandon camping to fix their relationship and show him his love. Tori feels relieved and lets herself be embraced by Kyle's arm. Kyle and Brandon leave the next morning, and their father-son journey is silent and tense. The sheriff visits Tori asking about Brandon. He shows her a photograph of the symbol at Noah's accident and describes it as a combination of 2B letters, insinuating Brandon Breyer. Tori pretends innocence, but the sheriff knows better. When she sends him away, the sheriff warns her that he will return. She runs to Brandon's room and finds his notebook full of the same symbols. She flips through it and is horrified to see depictions of Erica's and Noah's deaths, and an image showing Brandon destroying the entire planet. While Kyle and Brandon walk through the woods, Kyle points his gun at Brandon while he is distracted. He sheds a tear for what he is about to do before shooting him in the head. Brandon stands up, unharmed, looking at him in shock. Kyle is terrified and reloads his gun, only for Brandon to disappear. He runs, but Brandon quickly catches up and takes him down. As Kyle pleads for his life, Brandon hesitates before shooting lasers through his head, killing him. Tori desperately calls Kyle, but hears Brandon on his phone. She doesn't believe Kyle's death, despite Brandon directly telling her he killed his father. Brandon is already flying over their house and crushes Kyle's phone. Tori screams as Brandon starts destroying their home. She calls emergency services before he interrupts her call. A few minutes later, the sheriff and his deputy arrive at the scene to find the Breyer home in ruins. When Tori meets them, Brandon quickly kills the sheriff. The deputy orders Tori to hide, then goes to request reinforcements, but there is interference in the communication. As the policewoman scans the house, Brandon appears behind her. He throws her up and down the house until her body lands bleeding in front of Tori's hiding place under the bed. When Brandon checks, he doesn't find Tori, as she is already dangling outside the window. Tori ends up falling and injuring her hand. This reminds her of Brandon's previous injury. Knowing what to do, she runs to the barn with Brandon in pursuit. She goes to the locked door and checks the ship, which starts glowing. The light reveals Erica's dissected body behind her, and Tori cries upon recognizing her. Determined, she rips a metal shard from the ship and hides it in her back pocket. Tori calls Brandon, luring him with whistles as if they were playing. Brandon finds her, and Tori slowly approaches, trying to make him recognize the good inside himself. When Brandon melts into her embrace, she raises her arm, intending to kill her son with the metal shard, but Brandon stops her. Brandon feels the pain of Tori's betrayal and screams in rage. He grabs Tori and crashes through the barn's roof. Tori's head is bloody from the impact, and as they fly higher and higher, she touches her son's face before he lets go, letting her fall to her death. Brandon sees a plane in the distance and uses it to cover up the deaths in the Breyer home. The next morning he innocently eats a cookie while a news crew reports on the mysterious plane crash, leaving Brandon as the sole survivor.